What do you think is going on with social media? Let's start with transparency.
This is the first time in the history of civilization as we know it that everybody's been in the same room, and it doesn't work. Surprise.
Transparency is something that I think that is really masked, especially with what we're seeing right now in censorship. And I don't think that people actually are comfortable being transparent if it's against what the general consensus is. To speak your mind, you risk estrangement, you risk befriending, you risk canceled, censorship. So I just don't think we have transparency now. I feel like we're at an all-time low for transparency and curiosity and the ability to just express original, creative, curious thoughts.
Hello and welcome to Diamond Bridges. I'm your host, Irene Diamond. Now is the time for people of all generations to wake up to their true sense of purpose, to embrace their freedom, and to build bridges between the disjointed collective. Join me today as I feature two guests of the Gen X and Millennial generations to discuss their basic principles of faith surrounding current topics such as the legitimacy of social media, approach to healing, mental health awareness, human rights. I know, it's a bundle. My first guest is a millennial whom I've actually known personally and professionally since he was 4 years old. Early on in his career and fresh out of the University of Pennsylvania, he rapidly became a valued executive for Apple, then Google, and then for Facebook, ultimately training CEOs around the globe all about the uses of social media. Now independently an entrepreneur and community leader, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Eric Fisher. My second guest is a wellness innovator with a passion to support women in finding their purpose. Understand who you are, why you're beautiful, and stand for that. She herself was previously a professional Ford model. She owned her own fashion company in Europe and is presently recognized by Forbes as an international chef, where she builds community through her business, Purposeful Ventures, LLC. Please welcome wellness innovator, Helene Leeds.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Thank you both for joining me for today. What do you think is going on with social media? Let's start with transparency.
What's going on with social media regarding transparency?
Yes.
This is the first time in the history of civilization as we know it that everybody's been in the same room, and it doesn't work. Surprise. It turns out that language, even though we've used it for a very, very, very long time, and we've built our modern world with language, the words do not mean the same thing in different contexts. That's probably the biggest revelation of all. And it's okay. It's not like the end of the world. It's just this is the transition time as well. But the new generation coming in, they're going to be growing up with this as the default. So they will naturally be more adaptable to it, and we'll be fine.
So when you say more adaptable?
Yeah, they're growing up looking on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, whatever, being able to see anything. They can see anything they want, anywhere. So that's it. So they're growing up with the full exposure to every possibility. And hopefully that will kind of have them realize from an early age, like, oh, I see, everything in the world is happening. Everything is possible. Everything exists. And now, as an 11-year-old, 13-year-old, 19-year-old, 22-year-old, hopefully they are not held back by old, outdated ideas because they see that anything is possible. And so then they'll create from that place rather than, let's say, my generation and before. I rode the wave of social media through college, but we were grappling with ideas of what we thought was true that turned out not to be true. So that was its own problem that now these younger people don't have to deal with.
So how would you say that that truth has been revealed, and that those things that you thought were true are not true, and what is different now is what I'm asking.
Oh, I guess just that so much of society, regardless of country, has been built on oppression and control, fitting people into boxes, and it doesn't work anymore. There's no boxes to fit into. All the boxes have broken apart.
Okay, so let's go from transparency to political rhetoric. What do you think is going on with social media as it relates to the political rhetoric, conspiracy theories?
Yeah, there's a lot of consciousnesses in the world. Let's not forget that even on George Washington's deathbed, he told John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, his two buddies, who were the subsequent presidents, who had very opposing views on how to run the country, because John Adams was a Federalist in the North with his business and factories, and Thomas Jefferson was a landowner in the South with slaves. And George Washington said to them, don't fight and don't make two parties. It'll tear the country apart.
Wow.
And then he died, and they went right to it.
Really?
So,
wow.
Yeah.
He said that.
So, yeah, he was not George Washington had no party. He was just the
right.
guy from the war that people loved. So he was there for 8 years. So as soon as he died, they were fighting, and they had two different ideas about what to do. And then Thomas Jefferson and John Adams died on the same day in 1826.
Yeah. Wow.
On Independence Day, July 4th, 1826.
Really?
And once they were gone, that was it. I mean, then the country continued in its ways, and we have the Civil War, only 40 years later. So I would say there has never been a united view on anything. And I also, having lived all around the country, I've lived all around the United States, and I've visited every state capital. I've talked with people everywhere. I can say from my experience that there is no United States of America. It's an idea. It's not actually united. It's only united if we choose in our actions to make it so. But we have this issue because we are experiencing the most freedom of any generation in history. And when you have the most freedom, then you are free to believe whatever you want to believe. And now we are not going to be coming into coherence with each other because everybody's just in their own silos.
And I like what you said initially about being in the same room. Like that's the first time. That's revolutionary. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why the tech was made. It was revolutionary. We were like, wait, we can get everybody in the whole world in the same room. That's a great idea. It'll solve democracy. It might later, but not right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Eileen, you want to add?
I do. Transparency is something that I think that is really masked, especially with what we're seeing right now in censorship. And I don't think that people actually are comfortable being transparent if it's against what the general consensus is, whether it's political, which it generally is, or now medical, and just some people are brave enough to speak their mind, but like in Hollywood, it's clear there's a left extreme slant. And so to speak your mind, you risk estrangement, you risk befriending, you risk canceled, censorship. So I just don't think we have transparency now. I feel like we're at an all-time low for transparency and curiosity and the ability to just express original, creative, curious thoughts. And I think it's something that I think about a lot. How do we reinstate the permission to be curious again? How do we reinstate the idea that, you know, my media channel, whatever it is not the end all be all? But I actually have to use my time and effort to extend beyond what I'm comfortable and accustomed to get the truth. I have to look at multiple media channels, and living in Switzerland for 10 years, the way the news was reported was really different than the way the news is reported in this country. And so we really have to spend a lot more effort, time, and energy to have opinions, to have those opinions be informed, and to ensure that social media isn't influencing the future and politics and the truth as I know it to be.
Right. This is the biggest issue right now, I think, personally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I
Well,
think
to piggyback off of what you're saying with if you have the attention and time and space to do your own research, etc., I mean, that's the issue. Who has time and space? And
well, you
because
have to
everything
create for yourself.
well, yes, you do. Yes, you do. Very hard. I don't think any conditioning from any school, any job, any education is conditioning and teaching people how to make time and space for themselves. And so if we are approaching all social media and digital communication tools with a lack of time and space and personal sense of safety, then you're definitely going to bring that energy to it, which is not helpful. There is no room for curiosity. You're just there to validate your views and move on with your day and get outraged. But I tell you that even for me, I barely even use the computer anymore, which is awesome. And because my actual physical life is so enjoyable that there's nothing for me on the digital screen. But I remember that wasn't always like that. And I know that there are many people out there right now whose physical actual lives are not really enjoyable. It sucks.
Yeah. So what do you think of Elon Musk taking over Twitter and charging a fee for verified accounts?
Yeah, super fun. Where does he get all the time to tweet so much? I thought he was running multiple companies. I don't understand. Well, I don't know where he gets the time to tweet all the time and whatever, but it's kind of fun, actually. I mean, as someone who worked in social media and also built my own social platforms, I would relish the idea of like being in charge of my own social network of millions of people, except a lot of people hate him and a lot of people like him. And so it's the same stuff every time. There's just multiple opinions out there and it cannot be corralled and it will not be corralled. And also running a social media company from a tech business perspective is a completely different operation than building electric cars and building rockets. I'm not saying he can't do it, but it's just a completely different situation.
Maybe he needed to do something different.
Maybe he's getting bored.
Yeah.
Well, he also had 115 million followers on Twitter, so he's like one of the top users of it.
Well, I think he did it as a legacy play, honestly, and perhaps saving grace for for freedom of speech, which I value as an American. And I hope that other Americans value it as much. And I actually think that, makes sense to charge people to have verified accounts. It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out, but I'm excited. I'm excited about his leadership, even if it's not really him, as you alluded to, Eric. I'm excited to see what's on the other side of it. I'm hopeful.
We are arriving at this point with social media, or I guess we've been here for a while, where if everybody is on it, and everybody's using it to share like their thoughts and the news and whatever, then what is it? Because we can say freedom of speech, but that applies to like the government and society. But Twitter is a private company. They can do whatever they want. They can do whatever they want. And so that people are saying, no, Twitter is not like private. It is the internet where anybody can say anything.
Wow.
Then it's like, well, is it? Because there are people behind it that are profiting off of it. So what do you mean? You can't do that. It's not like the government is profiting off of free speech or a lack thereof necessarily. So this is a company with business goals. it's a real conundrum. These are questions that have never been asked before because we've never had this possibility.
It's true what you say. And we all know that the data, right, is really the most valuable asset. The information that they're gathering to be able to, then advertise. But you're right, it'll be interesting to see what business model, gets born out of it. And, what is freedom really?
The producers and I here at Diamond Bridges would love to hear from you. If you have a topic you would like us to feature, or if you have something to add to the dialogue, put your notes in the comments below.